Hi. Hi, how are you?
So Katie, you clearly don't need an introduction, but I'd like to start with a moment that maybe not everyone here is familiar with. That's when your name started showing up in scientific journals. You made history by getting a colonoscopy live on air on the Today Show, and it was referred to as a pretty little colon, I believe. And the really amazing thing that happened after that is that sociologists found that there was a 20% increase in the number of people getting colonoscopies in what they dubbed the Couric effect. For our audience members in the room or on live stream who might not know what sparked your advocacy around colon cancer specifically, can you share that story with us?
Yeah, of course. Well, first of all, hi everyone. I'm so delighted to be here. It's fun to be back in Washington because I grew up in Arlington. Well, for those of you youngins out in the audience, it really was born of tragedy. I lost my husband, Jay, who was a lawyer at Williams & Conley, very proud of Williams & Conley these days, by the way. He was diagnosed with colon cancer in 1997 when he was 41 years old. And it was stage 4, and he died 9 months later. Our daughters were at the time of his death 6 and 2. It was devastating, obviously. And I think during this ordeal, I felt so powerless, Erica. And if you're a can-do person and you're dealing with something like a terminal illness, stage 4 cancer with very little possibility of a cure, it's just a terrible feeling. So, I was really learned a lot during the course of Jay's illness, and that colorectal cancer is the #2 cancer killer of men and women combined, for example. And I learned all about the symptoms of colorectal cancer and all about screening. And so I was co-anchoring the Today Show at the time. And a couple of years after Jay's death, really about a year and a half, I decided it would be criminal if I didn't share what I had learned during the course of his illness, and that early detection really saves lives, and it's particularly efficacious for colorectal cancer because it has a 92% cure rate if it's detected early. So I wanted to destigmatize and demystify the whole process, and that's why I did not get it live. I'm not that brave. But I did do a colonoscopy on national television, and as a result, there was a 20% increase in colon cancer screenings, which really translates into a lot of mothers and fathers and sisters and brothers and kids and uncles and aunts being alive today. So I think that colonoscopy, even though I was loopy and noted that I had a pretty little colon during the procedure, really did save a number of lives. And later, I've tried to keep sort of being the nagging fishwife of colonoscopies and any kind of colon cancer screening. You can talk to your doctor. There are others less invasive tests. Colonoscopy is still considered the gold standard. But I took Jimmy Kimmel to get his first colonoscopy. I tried to get Kevin Hart to do one this year, but it was a hard pass, unfortunately. And I was joking at the University of Massachusetts Medical School because I gave the commencement address there, I think last year or the year before, and I said many of you probably would like me to take Tom Brady to get a colonoscopy, preferably without anesthesia, because he had just left Boston to play in Florida. But it's just something that I try to convince people and encourage them to do. And now the screening age for everyone here has been reduced to 45. So starting at age 45, you really need to get screened for colorectal cancer, and it could very much, it could possibly save your life. And if it's not you, talk to other people as well, if you're not old enough. And even if you're younger, the number of young people who are being diagnosed with colorectal cancer, I'm sure you all know, has really increased at an alarming rate. Young people today are twice as likely to be diagnosed with colon cancer and 4 times as likely to be diagnosed with rectal cancer than people who were born in 1950. They're trying to figure out why this is happening, whether it's microplastics, the overprescription of antibiotics, a whole host of reasons. I know scientists are studying this, early onset colorectal cancer. But that's why if you're younger, you really need to be acutely aware of the symptoms, which include, I'm sorry, I have to like do this public service announcement because when I have an attentive audience, which includes like a change in bowel habits, blood in your stool, an unexplained weight loss, fatigue, really be aggressive, talk to your doctor, because as I said, the number of people under the age of 50 who are being diagnosed with this disease in the prime of their lives, like my husband was, has really increased. And it's very upsetting, very alarming. So I just wanted to make sure you all knew that, and please spread the word.
And yeah, please. To your point, a recent study from the American Cancer Society found that adults in their 30s, 40s, and 50s are more likely than their parents to get 17 different types of cancers. And you've shown, you've advocated for all kinds of screenings. One is you had your hands-on advocacy during COVID when you documented getting a mammogram on social media. That screening actually led to a diagnosis. First off, we're so happy you're healthy now.
Thank you.
And yeah, tell us what it was like to go from an advocate to a patient in a split second.
Well, sadly, I've had a lot of devastating experiences with cancer because a couple of years after my husband Jay died, my sister Emily was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. And Emily, since we're in DC with a lot of politically minded people, my sister was a real rising star in Virginia Democratic politics. She was running for lieutenant governor with Mark Warner when he was running for governor, and sadly had to drop out of the race after she was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer and died just a couple of years later. And so I've experienced tremendous loss, but as a result, I'm very educated and knowledgeable about cancers of all kinds. And I used to call Al Rapson, who was deputy director of the NCI when Jay was sick, and I'd say, "Hey, Dr. Rapson, what's this Sanofi clinical trial they're doing with oxaliplatin? Is Jay eligible for that?" And he started answering the phone and saying, "Hi, Dr. Couric," to me. I think my understanding of the disease was really helpful when I was diagnosed with stage 1B breast cancer. And that was, I think, in 2021. And I had a lumpectomy and radiation. I had incredible care at New York Hospital, and I'm doing fine, thank goodness. I think I feel extremely lucky that I have access to extraordinarily good health care. One thing that I'm acutely aware of is the disparities among people who live in under-resourced communities, which is really upsetting. My doctor at New York Hospital, Dr. Lisa Newman, does a lot of work in this area. And when I was going under, I said to her, "Dr. Newman, I'm so lucky. I feel so bad for people who don't have access to the kind of care I'm getting here." So I have actually been on a tear. This is what I do. I think when bad things happen to me, I talk about them and I try to spread the word.
Are you talking about the dense breast piece of it? This is so, I wanted to say the way you put it on social media really illuminated for me. This is really stunning. 45% of women 40 and up have what are considered dense breasts. And the way you put it is for women who have them, in a mammogram, looking for abnormalities is like looking for a snowball in a snowfield.
Yes.
So we need advanced screenings for this.
Yes.
We don't have that in all cases.
That's right. That's right. So I'm one of those women, TMI, hi guys, who has dense breasts. And you're right. I think it's 42% actually of women 40 and over have what are considered dense breasts. And it's much harder to identify breast cancer in women with dense breasts. And by the way, has nothing to do with size. It just happens to do with, your particular situation. And for many of those women, there are 4 stages of dense breasts, from the least dense to the most dense. And as you said, Erica, it's like looking for a snowball against a backdrop of snow because the abnormality looks very similar to the breast density in a mammogram, even a 3D mammogram. And so I always routinely would get breast ultrasounds in addition to a mammogram when I was screened. And I was about 6 months late getting my mammogram. I think we all lost track of time during COVID. At least I did. And I went and I they found obviously a small growth in my left breast. So I have been on a tear about making sure you know if you have dense breasts, and finally, I think the FDA requires notification to women after they get a mammogram that they have dense breasts and what they should do about it, that they need to talk to their doctor. The problem is a lot of insurance companies don't pay for additional or supplemental screening in the form of an MRI or a breast ultrasound. So again, that health disparity really exists when it comes to early detection of breast cancer, which just isn't right. So along with Rosa DeLauro, I've been working on some legislation called the Find It Early Act, which will require insurers to cover additional supplemental screening for women with dense breasts, so their breast cancer can be detected early.
In 2008, you co-founded Stand Up to Cancer, which is committed to raising money for cancer research. In these first 4 months of the Trump administration, we've seen sweeping, unprecedented cuts and funding freezes and just general uncertainty around funding and the future of certain projects at universities, including those related to cancer research. What is the role of Stand Up to Cancer and organizations like it in this moment?
Well, I have to say it's been absolutely terrible and chilling what has happened to scientific research under the Trump administration. It's really actually unfathomable and unbelievable what they're doing in terms of slowing down the pace of medical and scientific research. We're talking about over $1 billion in funds cut from the NIH, which gives the majority of their money to the top research institutions in the country. We're talking about thousands of people losing their jobs. We're talking about PhD programs stalling or being, or getting rid of them altogether. We're talking about clinical trials. I met with somebody who runs something called the Colorectal Cancer Alliance on Friday in New York, and he was telling me about a young woman who has stage 4 metastatic colon cancer, was on a clinical trial at NIH to be treated with immunotherapy, a new immunotherapy that I think was treating a particular gene mutation. And she was notified that the clinical trial was being put on hold because of staffing cuts, because it was going to take twice as long to process her T cells. And that, you think about someone, and I know very well and very personally what it's like to have metastatic colon cancer or any advanced disease, being told that you're going to have to wait to get your treatment. And this is happening to people all over the country and all over the world. And Stand Up to Cancer obviously is affected. I'll just give you guys a little bit of background on Stand Up to Cancer. You notice how fast I'm talking because we don't have that much time up here. We started Stand Up to Cancer in 2008, 9 women who were really frustrated with the pace of cancer research. And we thought that there was too much competition, too much proprietary work being done, and people weren't sharing their research enough. And I learned this as I tried to come up with things that Jay could do when he had cancer. And so we decided that cancer research could move forward faster if there was more collaboration and less competition. So we've raised nearly $800 million to support dream teams of scientists who are from all different research institutions like Johns Hopkins or Harvard or MD Anderson or the Hutch, along with biomedical firms, along with other scientists. And they work together to try to solve some of these intractable problems. Initially, they were very like, wait, I'm not gonna work with this other institution. Now they take vacation together. So, it's really been valuable. Our research has contributed to 9 FDA-approved cancer-fighting drugs since we started, and we need these clinical trials to obviously get these drugs into the pipeline. And by the way, if you want some perspective on how important the NIH is to cancer research, from 2010 to 2019, 254 of the 256 new therapeutics approved by the FDA were all the result of at least partial research by the NIH. So I think that encapsulates how devastating these cuts are, and how, I agree with Tammy Baldwin, who said recently, we all want government to be more efficient, but curing Alzheimer's disease or cancer has nothing to do with waste, fraud, and abuse.
I wish we had more time. I have one final question for you. You have been the example of putting on your journalist hat when tragedy struck and being like, how can I research this, report this? What is the future? What is your future in how media can continue to affect change in public health? Whether that's what you think the media at large can do, what you think Katie Couric Media can do. What's next?
Well, we started this company, Katie Kirk Media. I didn't want to call it that, but everyone said we might as well, because at that time it was much easier to become a household name before there were a bazillion media outlets. And our goal is to get fact-based information to consumers, to lead better lives, to become better citizens, and to live longer, quite frankly. And I think at this time of a huge amount of medical and scientific disinformation, not to mention just a lack of trust and faith in our scientific community, which I think is deplorable, quite frankly, I want to make sure that I'm getting the most up-to-date and the most valid and verified scientific information. We do it through our newsletter, called Wake Up Call. We have a newsletter called Body and Soul, which deals with a lot of health and wellness. We have over 1 million subscribers to our newsletter. We have close to 10 million people on social media following our work. And I think now more than ever, it's absolutely critically important to rely on real experts who know what they're doing, who have the scientific experience and educational background to give the best, most up-to-date scientific information and medical information to consumers that they can totally trust and rely on.
That is all the time we have. I wish we had more. Thank you so much,
Thank
Katie.
you.
Thanks for being with us here in DC.
Thank
and we
you.
look forward to seeing who you take to get a colonoscopy next.
Thank you. Thanks.